Today on Dreamspeak, join a misfit crew of relapsing 20-somethings in their hi-jinx as they make a chocolate confection out of your cell phone. Roar with laughter as they hilariously get your life partner arrested for loitering. We dare you not to laugh as they hide your duffel bag from you over and over again. Sound unfunny? It is. Songwriter Andy Jaehrling shares a dream that is at once amusing, annoying, and inscrutable, but a trip down memory lane to his Freudian interpretation of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory begins to reveal its madcap message. This episode of Dreamspeak reminds us that no dream is too strange or silly to have a message in store.
Hi, dreamers. Thank you for learning with us today on Dreamspeak. I'm Rika.
And I'm Thomas.
And this is the podcast about dreams that teaches you a complete system to help you listen to your dreams and get the guidance they're providing you every day.
We'd like to say a big thank you to our listeners in Kokomo, Keller, and Boulder, in Weilmünster and Achstetten, Germany, and Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Dreamspeak wouldn't be possible without you. Hello and welcome to Dreamspeak. Our guest today is Andy Jaehrling. He is a friend of ours and he is a longtime songwriter and guitar player, and he's brought a dream with him to discuss today. Andy, would you say hello to our listeners and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, listeners. Yeah, I'd love to. Andy Jaehrling, originally from Iowa, but have traveled and lived in various parts of this country, landing in the Four Corners area, and met Thomas and Rika on a backpacking trip. My sweetie Shannon and I were hiking, and Thomas was filling up water, and we just started a conversation. And that was interesting enough, but the next day we ended up breaking camp and hiking out together. And I had wonderful conversations with both of them, and we've been, I guess, fast friends ever since. So glad to be here and undertaking this experience.
It's a very special way to meet somebody. Yeah. I don't know. We don't really believe in coincidences. You guys are pretty special. I'm glad we ran into you.
Yep.
Likewise.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your relationship with music? It's a really important part of your life.
Music really has always been kind of central. I always gravitated to it, and I haven't always been a musician. I wasn't one of those kids. I took like junior high band lessons on like snare drum, and then, through high school, I pretty much abandoned it. And I did get into a band as a singer very briefly for a gig when I was a senior in high school. And then I'd always kind of wanted to play guitar. It was always sort of in the background. And my life changed when I was 22 and I entered recovery. And as a sort of a goal, I guess, life goal to undertake something new, I decided to challenge myself and learn guitar. And the writing aspect kind of happened naturally. I always would kind of write little bits and poems and stuff like that. Nothing ever was really shown or developed or anything like that. And once I could get, 4 chords together, that was a song, and I kind of started writing. And my relationship to that is, I write about me. I don't write about stuff, even though there's some wonderful songs about stuff, and sometimes it's thinly veiled exercises in expressing something personal. But I write about me. I write about me and my life and my observations. Sometimes I'll throw a character or do third person, but generally speaking, it's me. So if you want to get to know me, read my lyrics. That's basically it. Don't get distracted by the playing or the singing or the sound of it. It's like, yeah, if you want to know me, look at my lyrics.
Yeah, I really like your lyrics. They're very creative, and I think we do understand you better, from listening to your music.
Me too. And, it's interesting because the way that you share yourself and your music makes me wonder if you think that it's helped you to grow as a person, because you've been doing it a long time.
A lot of the early stuff was sort of lack because it took me a while to find my partner. And that was something that was always sort of in the background of of my music. My buddy Dan, who I was in a band with and taught play guitar, he always called them my lonely guy songs, you know. So there is expression there. Does it work? I'm just trying to think if it works things out. And a lot of times I am kind of, how would I say it, whistling in the dark, sort of, because a lot of times when I was in grad school, or actually was in college, I took, several poetry classes, and I learned the device of the turn on like a sonnet. There's a turn that usually a sonnet follows a certain path, and like the last verse and down to the couplet, there's usually a twist. And when I'm writing, a lot of times you'll notice in my songs, the last verse is usually some sort of twist or something different than how things have been going thematically or whatever. A lot of times it's a lift at the end. Although this is going on and I'm not necessarily happy about it, or it might be somewhat of a dark subject, I'll always turn it at the end to kind of bring a lift to it. That was a little trick, strangely enough, from John Lennon towards the end of his life. He was trying to write positive things because he felt that if you put positivity out in the universe, you got positivity back. So you can express something that's maybe troubling, but as long as you can kind of end on a high note, it kind of puts that message out in the universe.
Who are some of your other influences besides John Lennon?
Bob Dylan, that's not a huge surprise there. Neil Young, Tom Petty, stuff like that. All of them would take slightly different approaches to songwriting, but all of them are quite simple in how they approach things. They can put something complex into something fairly simple, sometimes with a June Moon Spoon rhyme scheme, and, it's okay to do that. But, a lot of my stuff doesn't really sound like anybody. I kind of sound like me, for better, for worse, I guess. But those are my influences as far as music-wise and how they approach lyrics, and if I'm looking for a certain thing, Tom Petty's got that anthemic sort of chorusy kind of thing, and I'll take some things from that sometimes when I want to make a point, And Bob is just pure art as far as lyric writing and stuff like that, and it can be surreal or something kind of down home or something, some elements of that as well.
Our dream life is all about self-expression. There are things inside us that want to be known, that want to be understood. And it's really great to get to know a little bit more about that aspect of you. Your dream is pretty interesting too, so we might as well just jump in.
Okay, so this is a dream I had probably around about a month ago, and I'm not really a narrative type dreamer. It doesn't like go beginning, middle, and end, and there's this conversation and there's this theme, and it's like a movie. My dreams are generally pretty surreal. I just kind of drop into scenes, and there's weirdness, and as I mentioned to you guys before, I'm not necessarily a pleasant dreamer. I'm usually trying to work through some form of adversity from varying degrees, So my dreams are not necessarily happy-go-lucky. But anyways, this particular dream was just unlike any other dream I've had that I can really put my finger on. I do remember my dreams for the most part, not every night, but most nights I'll get a little piece of something, and certainly if I wake up or whatever, I'll remember what's going on. But anyways, I digress. So the dream was, and there was something I didn't tell you guys before, is that this dream started one way and morphed another way. So the thing that I remember first was me living in a kind of dark, dingy, kind of ramshackled apartment. And Shannon wasn't there. It was just me sort of living by myself in kind of squalor, and being very aware that I was living in squalor, as this is my condition. This is my life, right? How I got to this dream I'm going to tell you is it morphed from that room to me missing a bag. I was looking for a bag, like a duffel bag or something. I don't know what was in it or anything like that. So what ended up happening is that this morphed into a house. This room morphed into a room in a house, like, apparently. And it was filled with younger people that I knew when I lived in Washington State. younger people in recovery. They're no longer young people in recovery, but I have them sort of like they're always going to be like in their mid-20s or late 20s. I think some of them are approaching 40 by now, but they were always struck me and as very childlike in how they approach things. Not in a bad way, but people who are drunks and drug addicts are usually slightly immature. So there's that. I include myself in that as well. But so there was kind of mayhem, but it was more hi-jinxy. And they were not, I don't believe they were in a state of recovery. I think they were all relapsing in some way, shape, or form. But the odd thing is that they were making confections. They were like chocolatiers, and it wasn't drug chocolate or drug candy or anything like that, gummies or whatever, but they were making confections of varying kinds. And I was getting annoyed because they kept hiding this bag and I needed to leave. Enter Shannon into the picture where I'm trying to find the bag. Shannon wants to leave. Shannon is outside. I believe she's sitting on a car, with the hood of a car, waiting. And I can't find this bag. It keeps appearing and disappearing, and it keeps getting hid. So apparently I have it in my mind that somehow Shannon got arrested for loitering or vagrancy or something sitting outside of this place. And I wanted to get a hold of her to tell her I'll be right out. But every time I would grab my phone was covered in chocolate. Not wet chocolate, but dry chocolate, like you dip something, right? And it had like layers and like gumdrops on it and stuff like that. And I had to keep breaking this stuff off my phone. And it's like all these sort of young people in recovery were just kind of like, they were like these like annoying little fairies, kind of like kind of. And I was like, stop covering my phone in chocolate. And this like happened like 3 times. And I keep thinking Shannon is going to be really pissed because I can't get a hold of her she's going to be pissed because she got arrested because I didn't get out of the house quick enough and find my bag. And this happened like 3 times. And every time it was like, why is my phone covered in chocolate? And after like the 3rd time, I ended up waking up.
Frustrated too, right?
Frustrated.
Wow.
So,
that is something.
Yeah.
So one of the neat things is you can start from any point in a dream, and it's like almost like a mind web, like all the symbols and stuff are completely interrelated. So there's no harm in working in from anywhere. What are you curious to find out more about the meaning of? Which part of it stands out to you?
well, like I said, in terms of how I dream, I'm pretty aware of why my dreams are the way they are. You and I, you guys, we talked about that. I have these sort of dreams that I'm dealing with adversity or whatever because I kind of have I developed from childhood this view of the world as something sort of hostile or potentially dangerous to me that I have to work through or fight or whatever, right? This one is different because it's so odd. Yes, I'm dealing with some adversity, I guess, but it's not the usual stuff that I deal with. This was kind of, like I said, hi-jinx.
Yeah.
Hi-jinx. So I'm just kind of there's not any one part of the dream that I'm curious about. I'm just, because even where it started in this sort of room squalor apartment, that's kind of tracks. Then going
dream.
with the kind of theme and feel of my other dreams. But the whole transition to sort of the Willy Wonka drug house was I don't know. I mean, obviously, there can be some things about Shannon's part of the dream. So it obviously involves some element of whatever dynamics of our relationship or how I view certain aspects of our relationship. I'm afraid she's going to get mad at me for something that I'm doing that's affecting her, but it's not really something I'm totally in control of, and being very aware of that. other than the fact that, the occupants of the house were kind of, kind of odd. I wasn't really, I wasn't really, there's really nothing about that that's like remarkable to me. Even the ridiculousness around the phone being covered in chocolate, I mean, as far as like Freudian symbolism, I have no idea what to do with that one, but
Well, so what we've realized over all these years is we have a very practical process that usually sheds a lot of light on dreams, but it's actually a Jungian process. The more we learn, the more we realize that that is kind of the philosophy that we use to look at dreams. The most fundamental principle of the way that we work with dream messages or symbolic dreams, which this definitely is, because we have other kinds of experiences at nighttime that we have discovered over the years from ourselves and from others. But this is a message. And so the most fundamental thing about working with symbolic dreams is that everything and everyone, all of the content is a part of you. There are absolutely ways in which what you said about Shannon fit in to this, because your waking life and your outer dynamic in your relationships will feed back into your relationship with yourself, your one inner relationship. But Shannon is actually going to turn out to just be a part of your subconscious once we get deep into interpretation. So, okay, we might as well start with the most uncanny symbol in the dream, which is your chocolate-covered cell phone. You want to talk about cell phones a little bit, babe? Because you have phones in the dream all the time.
I do. And for me, the cell phone is obviously a means of communication, right? So the cell phone often, and I think for a lot of people, there'll be some problem where you can't make a phone call. It doesn't work. The numbers don't work. There's no picture on the screen. There's just some reason why you cannot connect. And for me, that's just not connecting really with my higher self or my divinity. I am missing something that's keeping me from connecting in the way that I want to connect to these, higher parts of myself, even if they show up as, I can't call Thomas or I can't call somebody else,
hmm
it's they're really just parts of me. And so, but being covered in chocolate is really interesting. So maybe you should tell us what you think about Willy Wonka, because that seems like an important sort of symbol here.
well, first off, I like chocolate and I like sweets. So there's nothing going on there. The whole Willy Wonka aspect, and not Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I mean, I grew up with Willy Wonka, that movie with Gene Wilder and everything. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I've seen that movie a lot. I even dissected it in grad school from a psychoanalytic standpoint as well.
Oh, well, here we go, buddy.
And it is about
Roll mine here.
and it is about repression. The children are pure id, and the whole thing is trying to repress them, and they're let off the hook, and they act like pure id, which is sort of the unregulated. So, and there we did various readings. We did a Marxist reading of it, and we did some other things. But I was responsible for the psychoanalytic side because my part of my major in grad school was psychoanalytic lit theory. So, ranging from Freud to Lacan to Helene Cixous and the feminists and things of that nature as well. So dream interpretation and theory is I've been very aware of it. I have a pretty rudimentary look at it or take on it. But anyways, I digress. But that's sort of Willy Wonka to me, you know. And there's
That's gold. We should try, if we can, to get a little bit more from that. As you remember things about what you said in that paper, you should definitely interrupt and bring that to bear here, because I know that that pertains to the symbolism of your dream.
well, the funny thing was it wasn't a paper, it was a see, this is what English masters students get together and do on a Friday night. We all got together and decided to do. It was on campus. And I can't remember if it was all part of the English Honor Society or we just all decided to do it because we were in a class together. But we got together and watched Willy Wonka and did a reading of the movie.
Wow.
So it was in real time. So my summation of it as, here are children, the whole thing. If who the reward is that Charlie was the one who repressed and he won. So he who represses the most is the one who wins in the end.
Oh, interesting.
Whereas the other kids who didn't repress and were pure id, they blew up into blueberries and fell in chocolate rivers and that kind of stuff.
You just got one of the most important pieces to this dream. I can feel it.
Yeah.
He who represses the most wins in the end. That's a big part of what you're telling yourself with this dream.
Interesting. I'm trying to make the connection other than the fact because the Willy Wonka thing seems separate. What I just told you
Right?
seems separate from the dream. Help me connect the two if you can.
I can. But Andy, I will say, and this is ultimately this is your dream, and I want you to understand that we completely respect whatever it is that your perspective is at the end of the.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But in the way that we look at dreams, when you have your own memory, your own psychoanalytic material, your own associations, it doesn't matter if you have visually seen or encountered in the narrative that specific symbol. It's like pulling a thread that's loose on a sweater. It's all attached and it just unravels. And Willy Wonka is super symbolic in this dream, no question.
Interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't have put that together.
Well, we used to either, but we've realized just from trial and error over the years that these things don't have to appear, quote unquote. It's all carried in that symbol of a chocolate covered phone. It's just right there.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing too, Andy, is you remember how when you were kind of trying to verbalize the way that the dream imagery felt to you, just your association, you used the term Willy Wonka a couple of times. Do you remember?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's there. So we really have to just trust our intuition when it comes to verbalizing things. I've
Mm-hmm.
experiences when I'm waking up with a message that there's almost nothing. Like there's no image. There's like just darkness because it's so vague or unknown to me. And I'll get like one word or a phrase. And then immediately I can just start feeling the emotions around it, the energy it was carrying. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is the message that I'm supposed to take with me today. And so there's like almost a whole dream, but there was no visual at all.
Interesting.
Should we?
Yeah, let's keep going. I'm trying to get my head wrapped around it. I'm not having any disagreement or anything like that. I'm trying to, because like I said, I'm usually pretty good at picking up what my dreams are, where they're based out of or whatever. But this one is a little surprising to me. So that's kind of why I'm a little kind of at a loss, I guess as you could say. Because the question would be, what is this dream symbolizing in my own life that whether either I should repress, want to repress, which I really don't. So I'm not really sure, even though my summation is he who represses the most wins. I'm not sure how that manifests in my life.
Well, it may be that that is just a subconscious belief that you have had a long time, and it wants to be seen for what it is, so that because it's not really a great
Right. It's so
belief
right.
to have,
Right.
that you
Right.
do something about it. If you We do a lot of work with our beliefs, and our dreams are so wonderful at showing us what our subconscious beliefs are. And then once we become aware of them, then we have the opportunity to do something about it. But if we don't even know that this is a belief that we hold, in our soul, then we can't do anything about it, right? So maybe it's just trying to show you that this is something that you believe.
And another thing that we should share at this point is a big principle of dream interpretation for us is we only dream in present time. So if we're not currently doing something, we will not get a message about it. Dreams that are speculative about the future are not symbolic message dreams. Dreams that connect to our past are just drawing in that information to get their point across. They're never about the past directly. Of course, echoes of the past carry forward into our present life. Our dreams want to be encouraging and they want to help us to take strides in our life. And so they will only tell us about things that we can make positive changes with right now. So I think Rika said it very well. And I would just add to that, that I have a feeling, because dreams are only in present time, that not only do you want to become aware of this belief, but that you're ready to act on changing it, that you don't be governed by this the way that you perhaps have in the past.
I'm thinking maybe it's not repression, but more conformity of as a means of getting ahead, or because I do believe a lot of people are successful because they conform to, whatever rigid patterns of what people expect success to look like, or playing a game or whatever. But I don't, that's not something I'm necessarily in tune with as far as how I want to conduct myself.
Part of what you may have done with your willpower in your life is to try to walk in the world in a way that you can have self-respect and to not be overly conformist. In my opinion, it's an eternal tension that everyone has to work on, right? Because we can't survive without any sense of belonging or conformity, but we also don't want to become robots. And everybody takes their own walk with that. Some people really surrender to that and they just go along to get along. And that doesn't seem like you at all. So has conformity been kind of a theme through your life since, adolescence or your 20s or something like that?
Part of my worldview and everything else is certainly informed by my childhood trauma, which, my feelings are, you need to not be different. You need to keep things under wraps, and you don't tell people stuff, because if you do,
Yes, a lot.
you end up in psych. I know, if you end up in psych wards or whatever, so that it's dangerous to tell people how you feel and everything else. So there's that aspect of it. Then there's the recovery aspect of that as well, which, the and I can only speak for me. I can't speak for everybody who's in recovery or somebody who's an alcoholic. I can only talk about it in reference to me. But a lot of my natural instincts, as it were, can be kind of messy and harmful to people. So I have to always regulate, right? With employing, various solutions in recovery. So I'm always very aware of my behavior and how I'm coming off. And so there is, I wouldn't call it repression or anything like that. It's more working through, okay, this is, how I'm reacting right now. Now let's take a look and see, is that reality or is that part of my disease and how that kind of colors my perception? And then, okay, how do I get past it? And I don't view the recovery aspect as repression or anything like that.
My impression is that you poured your heart and soul into recovery. And I don't see it as repression at all. I don't think that the dream is trying to say that either. I think what we're going to find, and we can bring more symbols into this and it'll give us more clarity. But what I think we're going to find is you're really ripe to change an old, outworn belief, because you have earned a real change at a fundamental level within yourself through your contribution to your own recovery, through the support that you extend to other people in recovery. And you gain a lot of wisdom from that. And you realize that, you're not in mortal danger sharing about yourself. But the past is really in the past. And you've also learned how to have a really healthy level of self-awareness so that you can regulate, right? When you say regulate, I hear really good juice behind that. And that is very distinct from repression. It's about self-awareness and using it to the benefit of yourself and the other people around you. So what I'm thinking is maybe there's a piece of you that's still in that previous stage. And the dream will confirm or disconfirm that as we keep bringing symbols in. So the next thing that I would ask us to examine is if we're proceeding on the assumption that all of these mischievous, nymph-like people, skipping around the house, doing hijinks and dipping your phone in chocolate, if they're all a part of you, then what's their overall energy? What part of you in this? And also, were you aware of their genders? Was it like half men, half women, mostly men, mostly women?
I think it was both. I think it was both.
Okay, so then there's not a strong bias to your conscious level where you're aware of what's going on, or your subconscious level. It's a mix. So you have the phenomenon kind of throughout your mind, throughout Andy, is this one thing that's kind of causing hijinks. So what was the energy of these aspects? Because you said they were relapsing. I think that's salient.
Yeah. Yeah. They definitely weren't in recovery at that particular time. Now, I don't know if all of them were or weren't. How did I regard them?
Yeah, exactly. How did you regard?
Kind kind of kind of as an annoyance, I guess. Annoyance maybe at the frivolity.
Your snap judgments and stuff usually aren't so snap when it comes to dreams. They're usually spot on. One thing that you mentioned earlier was like they were putting you in mind of people you had really known. And you were saying that they, were in that phase of life when they were young adults, and you found that they had very childlike qualities, right?
Mhm.
Can you say more about what it means to you to be childlike? What did that mean to you when you think about those people from your past?
There wasn't a lot of respect.
Respect for you?
No, I would say respect for them and how they were conducting themselves.
So there wasn't a lot of self-respect.
No, I mean, as far as the judgment of my reaction to
Oh, okay.
the
You don't
very
respect them.
there didn't seem to be much. There wasn't like, "Oh, look at them being happy and doing their thing." There was a little bit of, yeah, I didn't necessarily respect it.
Okay. So now I have the impression that you place a lot of value on respecting yourself. Is that fair to say?
I'd say so, yeah.
And again, as your friend, I respect you too, right? I think you're very worthy of respect, and especially because of what you've done with changing your own life habits and helping be a positive influence on other people. And so that might be a lens that you would bring to examining yourself, and these are parts of you that you don't respect. Now, something we need to bring in here from the theory of dreaming that we use is you were in the dream. You know what I mean? Like you felt very
Yeah.
present in that scene, right? There is an interesting twist to dream interpretation, which is that even though it's a locus of awareness and that it feels like you're really no more substantive than any of these other people or things or the phone covered in chocolate when it comes to a dream. What's important about the you in the dream, which we refer to as the dreamer, is that it's kind of like your present state of evolution and consciousness. So the you energy in the dream that sometimes is a focal point or a centerpiece, the dreamer, it gives you messages about like, where am I at right now? And as you could see, the dreamer was totally unmoved by this. The dreamer was annoyed. The dreamer didn't feel any respect for these people and their hijinks. But the dreamer was not fundamentally changed in any way by their actions.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah,
that
largely. Except for them covering my phone in chocolate, but other than that,
Hiding your bag.
they were hiding my bag, yes.
we haven't talked about that, but that could be really helpful.
Well, for me, I have a lot of bags in my dreams too. And that is what it sounds like is usually baggage. It's we
My
carry around with us
my
or that
stuff.
feel that we need, which,
Mhm,
usually we really don't, but, we think it's important to, and
mhm,
take it away from you. And you felt that this was really important. This was why you couldn't leave because you had to find your bag, right?
mhm. And I never did. I
No,
never did.
because they were really hiding it.
It would appear and disappear. It would appear and disappear.
So every now and then you catch sight of it and then it disappear.
Yeah, I would track it down and then it would disappear again.
Cool. That's starting to make sense to me. So here's the thing that we've noticed about dream symbols, including these people, right? They're parts of you. Dream symbols can have very paradoxical meanings. Dreams in general work on multiple levels, and it is entirely possible for symbol in a dream like these people, I'm thinking maybe, to carry paradoxical energy. And philosophically, what that puts me in mind of is as human beings, we carry paradoxes. We're full of contradictions, and that doesn't make us right. Okay. It doesn't
Yeah.
bad people. It doesn't mean that there is something fundamentally wrong with us. It means we're human. It's a part of human nature to be self-contradictory and just trying to unravel and understand ourselves throughout our life cycle. So what I'm thinking is, and I'm not sure yet, but my intuition may be perking up here, which is kind of my best ally in dream interpretation. I think these relapsing, mischievous parts of you while they're definitely annoying you and causing you some problems, probably also in waking life, sort of distracting, just causing problems, sort of being in your way, if that makes sense. I think they may also have like the merry prankster dimension to them of they're like wise, crazy wise teachers for you too. Like they're trying to call your attention to something important. And I think Rico is getting to the bottom of it. They're hiding your bag because you don't need it. And they're trying to help you start seeing that you no longer need what's in it.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. That tracks. That makes sense. That makes sense.
So there's a lot of ways we can go about unraveling just that one symbol. And sometimes it's out and sometimes it doesn't. But something that will really help to try to get to the bottom of the bag, even though you don't know what's inside, is it's it's important to understand in the dream bag, it doesn't matter what it looked like. It doesn't matter what shape it was.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be a direct correspondence to any bag in waking life. But if you can open your mind and feel the energy that you associated with it, if you can feel the emotional reaction to looking for it, not finding it, if you can feel the feeling you had, because remember, you said it connected the first scene, which we hadn't talked about, to this scene.
Mm.
You can feel why did you have that sense of urgency or need? Like, what did that feel like to be getting that bag? You probably, not necessarily, but probably get something from your waking life that we can work with because ultimately we want to bring the dream and your waking circumstances back together.
Mm-hmm.
That could help. Like bags that it might have reminded you of, trips that you might have taken where you're like, oh, yeah, that immediately comes to mind. This was a bag, just any associations like that
Mm.
for waking life may be helpful here.
It's interesting because it was like a red bag, and I don't have a red duffel bag or anything like that, and it was like kind of a soft-sided bag. Wasn't like rigid or anything like that, like a zipper duffel bag. I think it had handles, but it was sort of like a kind of like more like a nylon type duffel bag, not very big. And it was it. I don't know what was it. Might have been clothes. I don't know. I'll tell you what. It didn't seem like there was like an attachment to it other than the fact that it's my bag and I have to take it with me. So there wasn't like,
You just nailed it, Annie. You
yeah,
freaking love it, dude. What you just said was it wasn't like there was an attachment to it. It was, it's my bag and I have to take it with me. You are
yeah,
over this shit and you don't need it.
but there's some sort of compulsion to still drag it along regardless.
That's
Or I can't exit or I can't
right.
move forward without it, right?
Exactly.
Or I feel like that, yeah.
Right. You feel like you can't move forward without it. So if we could pinpoint what it was in your waking life, then we're really getting to the essence of this message. I am now sure that this is what you're trying to talk to yourself about. You're telling yourself, awaken to the fact that you are already done with this process. Your healing is complete and you can let go.
That's nice. That's nice.
So what healing is this about? What change in you is this about?
It could be, you and I talked, Thomas, about my being in therapy, kind of late, but, better late than never. But in letting go of many, many things, trying to work past my worldview, trying to work past how I view myself and be a bit more open.
What made you close down in the first place? Was it all from childhood?
Pretty much, I would say, I think that was pretty damaging and again, it wasn't anything anybody told me or anything else. It's something I arrived at myself.
That's how trauma
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. So it informed everything. I mean, if you, I imagine with a lot of people who have childhood trauma, if you're 7 years old and you come to this conclusion, it's going to do a number on your life, and I didn't really come into touch with it until I was what maybe I was 55,
Interesting.
you know. So I mean, this informed a lot of my life to that point, and knowing it's there, it wasn't like I repressed the memory or repressed or I just never thought about it. It was just like, well, that's just what happened, you know. It didn't take much to pull on the thread to say, oh yeah, that's me being kind of private, if you will, what was all part of that. That wasn't a huge surprise, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. You know what I mean? Without it being something that's really heavily influential on how I conduct myself for decades, you know?
Right. You don't think
So,
the bag
go ahead.
you don't think that tendency to stay closed off, do you?
Probably, probably.
You think
Guarded.
well, I was just thinking the nature of a closed bag and not knowing what was
Yeah,
inside.
yeah,
Maybe even you don't know sometimes what's in there anymore.
yeah. There's not really anything to protect at this point in time.
If we've matched up your waking life to the bag, then that fits really well symbolically.
Hmm.
It's basically like you've done all this healing and it's showing you, it's just trying to encourage you. It's trying to say, you're right. Like you can open up, you cannot open up, but you're safe and you know that you're safe.
Yeah, yeah. That it hasn't helped. It hasn't really served me. Sure, I guess it's kept me safe, so to speak, but it has never served me.
Say more about that.
Well, it kept me alone for a long time, and even when I wasn't there, fully there, because everything was still guarded. And that could be with any and I'm not even just talking romantically. I'm talking friend-wise, family-wise, you know, pretty much with anybody.
How does it resonate within you or not that I'm offering the possibility that you have gotten past this and that you're not really like that anymore?
Left to my own devices, that's what I would sort of revert to. Because that's comfortable. That's what I know. It's how I deal with the world. So I'm aware that I don't want that. I do want to move past this. I want to be able to be open, you know, and that's the catalyst for all of this moving forward was that as a musician, I was having severe performance anxiety as a solo artist to the point of disassociation.
I remember you sharing that with me.
Yeah, and not wanting that and having to, look at it. It was more than just, oh, I'm worried people won't like me, or it was so much more than that, but connected to my childhood trauma. And again, not necessarily the trauma itself, but how I dealt with the trauma. I guess that's
Mhm.
what's important. It wasn't the trauma itself. It was how I dealt with it that sort of shaped things. Like I said, nothing was necessarily done to me, but I arrived at a conclusion that from here on out, this is how I have to conduct
Mhm.
myself, which is kind of a heavy thing for a 7-year-old to kind of arrive at and still hold on to until he's 55 years old.
It's super heavy. And I really appreciate you sharing that. You figured out what the apartment is from the first scene.
Ah,
No, I mean, you just figured it out and you just told us.
oh, that, yes, Thomas, yes.
It's your natural tendency to regress. And it's also really interesting because I think it kind of fits this pattern that we're developing around this message because it's not as natural of a tendency to regress as you put on yourself. And the reason I know that is because indoor spaces represent mindsets, and you were in this squalor mindset, but you don't live there.
Yeah.
Was that your permanent home in the dream?
I, it,
Maybe it wasn't clear.
it did, it wasn't clear that it was permanent. It either was something it seemed like I reverted to it.
Exactly. It's just
It
a
was
place that you go, and it's not got much of a hold over you anymore. Another thing the dream is trying to tell you is you have the ability at this point in your development to not be in there. That it's basically
yeah.
something that you choose to do now and that you don't like,
Mhm. Very true. Very true.
and that you have enough autonomy, enough willpower to not do that. And so that's when you moved out in terms of the narrative of the dream, and your bag was the bridge. So I think Rika was right from the beginning that the bag, whatever its contents might be, it symbolizes this baggage. And the baggage is what connects that tendency to regress to this other mindset, which unfortunately is full of annoyances, but essentially you have control mostly in that environment, right? It's kind of a
Yeah.
progress report for you on how are you doing with your level of self-respect and self-control? Because like you said, these guys were sort of relapsing, or at least it seemed like they almost all were.
Mm,
And substances do not translate directly into waking life. They're symbolic, like almost everything in it.
mhm.
It's not a one-to-one correspondence. Intoxicants in a dream have to do with our negative tendency to surrender our willpower. Ultimately, what really defines being a human being, as we've learned from dream interpretation, is how we use our willpower and attention.
Mm.
What do we do with our energy that we're given in this life? And when we surrender it, it's a violation of universal law. We're all supposed to hold ourselves to a really high standard of moving forward in life with a sense of purpose, or at least being on the path to really seeking purpose and then using
Mm.
our energy purposefully, like you do with your music, like you do with
Mhm.
helping people. And now, hang on, let me amend that. Like you do with honoring your own recovery by paying it forward to other people that also want to be in recovery. Those are really purposeful uses of your willpower. All these little, hijinks people, they're surrendering their willpower. So it's saying you still
Mhm.
have that tendency. There's these minor parts of you that you don't even know because they're not important. They're just there that are still annoying you because you haven't ever found a way to bring them peace. The dreamer is solid. Your work that's really gone deep within you and your sense of your identity at this point is really solid, and you've got this. You've got the recovery thing. You've moved past this baggage. You are in control and things are fine. You're still at a point where you got these parts of you that play games with your mind and that it really bugs you. And that's kind of where I guess, your new working edge is. And that's when Shannon enters the dream. And we're going to get insight,
Mm.
I'm sure, because she's a very important part of your subconscious, just like Rika is in my dreams.
Mm.
It's fascinating, the interplay between our psyche and our outer life that is evident when you start looking at symbolic dreams, because you see, in order for us to really make change in our life, we need a conscious intent and we need subconscious mind stuff. It's kind of hard to describe exactly what it is. We talk about it as source energy, but the sense of what our subconscious is in a practical sense in dream interpretation, it's about the fact that we can draw up source energy from the universe and that we start connecting it to our own ego and our own identity at that point. Like we feel a sense of ownership over it. But that also has to do with the fact that we have a certain amount of control over it. So even though we might not consciously be aware of what we're doing in the subconscious, it's purposeful and it's powerful. And so we've got these aspects of our subconscious represented by our partnered relationship person. And that basically implies, if the relationship is healthy, that we are gaining a tremendous amount from that partner. It is not literally their stuff. We're not drawing energy from them. It's like we're emulating them, or they're a really good support for us, or they're a good example for us. And then we rise to the occasion more. And then more and more, the useful qualities that we see in them, we start to use in our own life. So the example that I regularly use on the show with Rika is typically when she shows up in my dreams, it's unconditional support for myself. It's like the most potent part of myself that really loves me because I have issues around self-love and self-acceptance like so many people do. But I know that's a big problem for me. So she usually symbolizes that part of me that's really got a healthy self-love going, that really is like my cheerleader. So we should talk about what you think the qualities of this part of you would be that Shannon symbolizes. And the way you normally do it is if you just off the cuff, if you describe a few words that are like your first sense of your partner, that'll usually get you there.
Well, she is open. We complement each other quite well, but the thing that causes her maybe a bit of frustration is the fact that I don't open up all the time, or I don't always tell her how I'm feeling or how I'm thinking and everything else, and she desperately wants to know.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and it is foreign to me, and I've been trying because regardless of whether I tell her something that maybe she doesn't want to hear or share an opinion that might run contrary to hers or whatever, not that I can't really think of anything that would, but there is still that reservation that me opening up is going to damage either her or me. I understand what you're saying about, the Shannon in the dream is not Shannon, but that is, again, some of that aspect of something I want to get past, but it's challenging because she's the closest person to me.
Do you reveal more to her than anyone else?
Not necessarily.
Meaning you reveal not much to anyone.
I compartmentalize quite a bit. So there is sponsor, obviously there's a lot shared that as part
Got
of
it.
recovery. And then my buddy Dan, but that's more, again, we talk, we both share a lot about, what's going on in our lives that isn't necessarily stuff you would necessarily share with your partner. And I would expect her to have the same thing with her friend. My point is I would like to continue to be more open with her as far as increasing the intimacy. She desperately wants to know me more, and again, more of what I think and how I feel about stuff and everything else. And that's been challenging.
Well, and the other thing too is it feels like at a root level within you, you don't really see why.
Yeah, it like I said, it is baffling to me. I understand it because it's like I love her and I want to be a good intimate and be a good partner with her. It's just not something that comes naturally to me. Intimacy is not something I'm a natural with.
And
And
furthermore, I would say that would like that. She desperately wants that. You don't desperately want to be known.
baby steps,
Right on.
baby steps. Again, this is 40 years of defense mechanisms.
It's very difficult.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, guys, the fact that we're even having this conversation is remarkable.
I totally agree. I'm really, really proud of you for just putting yourself out there in such a big way, just to even share your dreams, because it goes to a really deep place really quickly.
Yeah, I
Well,
was very surprised when Thomas told me that you agreed to share a dream with us.
well, I was surprised too, and I thought the dream was going to be relatively safe. So, but in for a penny, in for a pound. So, I mean, that's just it. So, it's not anything, it's me. It's kind of warts and all, and it's nothing that's that big of a deal.
I completely agree. It's just normal being a person stuff.
Yeah, which again, having this sort of conversation is sort of foreign to me, but this is also part of that as well. So, whatever your listenership is, nice to meet you.
Don't worry, it's like 10 people.
A lot of that have the same issues, and that's
Yeah, probably
great,
so.
because
Yeah.
we all have things. We do, and I think it's helpful to realize that you're not the only one that struggles with that. And I know Thomas would love for me to be more open and share more, but coming from a good German family, like it's difficult for me. So
Yeah.
I can really relate to that. Like I have to work at it, and he has to try and pull stuff out of me, and it's not that comfortable.
Yeah, Shannon does the same thing. She is constantly trying to engage me in this stuff, and it's really challenging. It is really challenging, but part of this process and everything, we are communicating better, and I am giving a bit more. Probably not as much as what she would like, but I'm working on it, and I'm aware of it. I know what it means to her, and I know it'll ultimately benefit me as well, regardless of my sort of like, well, I don't know about this. I don't know how it is to be like that. So it is a toe in the water or baby step or whatever. But I mean, to her credit, she's hanging in there with me. So, there must be something there. I, I think I'll keep pursuing this. Maybe in another 10 years, who knows how it'll be. But that's kind of the upshot of this is my own sort of healing. But again, this stuff doesn't serve me. And it's also become apparent that this has been something that has been sort of a roadblock in my relationship with Shannon as well throughout the years and stuff like that. I'm trying to be more open with her because I want to. It doesn't make sense to me. It's foreign. And it's one of those acting yourself into a new way of thinking. That's sort of a recovery thing. So that's kind of how it is. It's not like I'm going to be open and that's my idea and I'm going to start being open. It's like I got to start being open to be comfortable with it, to know that it's safe. I guess.
Yes. I think that's a
So,
great, and I think we got a lot out of this stream.
mhm.
So what do you
What's a chocolate? What the hell's the chocolate on the phone though? I mean, what?
Let's tackle that. So, what do you like about chocolate?
I don't know. It's kind of like comfort.
You got it, Andy. You're actually very penetrating amateur dream interpreter. Every time I ask you something, you get right to the meaning of it. Shannon represents your open side, by the way. Just a little take
Mhm.
for you,
Yeah.
because that's a really empowering, really important part of your growth, of your growing edge. So that is basically exactly like you would probably intuit in waking life from your relationship and the way
Mhm.
you guys are yin and yang and you balance each other well. That's happening on the level of inner transformation in your subconscious as well. So it's really positive force and you are owning it and you're open to that openness coming in and opening you. So that's pretty great. And then this whole thing about the chocolate, you said it's comfort. That's it. That's all we need. So it's a source of comfort for you. And what it means is you're using either one or various forms of comfort in your waking life, and it's causing you to lose a real important connection to yourself.
Mm.
And it keeps happening, and it's frustrating. Do you know what your comfort places are that you're going to that are cutting off your connection with Shannon? And what is that like? You hide in your head,
Yeah. I can just kinda disappear.
and that feels
She it
comfortable.
well, it's what I know.
But I'm saying,
Is it
like,
is it I mean, I'm an introvert, so sometimes that head time is comforting or a retreat or whatever, but I've lived in my head for a long time, and it doesn't serve me.
and while you were busy comforting yourself, Shannon got arrested for loitering. So great job.
Well, the frivolous pixie aspects of myself, yes. I wanna blame the pixies, but that's me too, so
Damn. This is actually really interesting because the loitering, I'm pretty sure I just got an insight about that as well. It's like she's this aspect of you that is already open, that's cultivating greater openness in you, that's helping you, is waiting around for you to change. And you're like, no,
yeah,
I want to just dip this in chocolate again.
yeah, yeah, I gotta retreat or the squalor room or whatever that is.
You've got it. You pretty much unlock the
Mm.
whole thing. You're pretty good at this, honestly. It comes up quick for you and you figure out, you get right to the nugget, the nugget.
I guess in some ways, there's been a lot of that throughout my life. It's easy to get to. I guess you could say it's just a question of being able to drop the fear around it, and there it is.
Yeah, doing it is a lot different, but the thing is, Andy, I really hope you take heart because this dream shows in multiple ways you're already doing the change work, and it's not superficial. It's at a very deep level.
I appreciate that because I wouldn't have thought this dream was that. But then again, I'm not surprised that it is.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I guess I have been putting in the work and checking my progress because I'm not actively in therapy right now. It's
Mhm.
always kind of like, well, I'm trying to. That was the whole thing. It's like, okay, well, I've got the insight, I've got the techniques, I've got the things to move forward, and now it's time to apply it. Yeah, it is kind of like, well, how am I doing? So
Mhm.
thanks for holding up the mirror.
It's a pleasure. It really is. I'm so glad that you decided to join us. Thank you.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. No, really, no, really. Thank you guys. As I said, and in for a penny, in for a pound. I wasn't gonna waste your time with this. So it's like it's an opportunity to practice.
Essentially, with any dream symbol, what you do is there's a universal meaning that can be looked up in a good dream dictionary. There's a lot of really trash ones, unfortunately, but we have a couple of good recommendations if you ever want to get one.
Oh,
And then you got to be really reflective, like we were, about your personal associations
mm,
and two things together. And that's how you really get that essence out of it.
mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, you have a knack for this. You got right to the bottom of symbols, and it was really great to talk to you about your dream.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, thank you. Thanks for making that possible.
You're welcome.
I really do appreciate it, and it was fun. Again, something very surprising that was very sort of unexpected from a very odd source.
I love that.
Yeah,
I do.
it is fun.
I love to see how it all comes out and how it all works out.
Well, again, thank you for taking me on that journey. I appreciate it.
You can find this podcast on all popular streaming services. Email us a dream today at contact@dreamspeak.us. Check out our YouTube channel for a free introductory dream course. Connect with DreamSpeak for even more learning. Our socials are in the description. Our theme music was composed by me, Rika. This podcast does not constitute medical advice. If you have concerns about your well-being, talk to your doctor or a mental health professional.